Welcome everybody, and today I'm going to be kind of comparing the 2017 MacBook Pro 13-inch with the Touch Bar i5 processor, 8 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gig SSD versus the 2017 Surface Pro with the same specs in i5, 7th gen processor, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and a 256 gig SSD. So to get started, I guess we'll start over with the MacBook Pro. I've been using the MacBook Pro over the last month or so to do work on, and it's a good computer, but it does have some glitches and things like that if you're trying to use Parallels like I do to work inside of Windows. The two biggest differences, of course, between the two is going to be the operating system. Obviously, the Mac operating system is completely different from Windows. They both have their pluses and their minuses, I guess you could say. So, for me, one of the biggest things between the two is going to be the trackpad. A lot of people rave about this trackpad. I actually don't really like it. I think it's a little bit quirky to use. I am used to it now. The double tap gives you a right-click option. It's 2 fingers in the middle of the trackpad anywhere will give you a right click, which is easy enough when you're using it versus just a standard click in the right corner to get a right click on a Windows PC. But the hardest thing for me was really when I was trying to grab a folder and drag it. See, I just clicked and it didn't go. It's like you have to click with the perfect amount of pressure to click and drag a file, which I often do in work to move like a file on or off of a USB drive. That's one of the biggest things that I've had to get used to, and I'm a little bit better at it now after a month, but it's kind of a pain in the butt, to be honest with you. The keys on there are not bad. Some people really don't like them. They don't have a very far travel. I don't have a whole lot of problem with it. Yes, they're very sensitive versus the type cover keys. They're used to, they feel like a normal keyboard, I guess is the best description. Typing, I guess I would probably prefer it to be on the Surface Pro versus the MacBook Pro. I do think that it's just a little bit easier. The touch bar is cool. It gives you different options depending on what app you're using. But to be honest with you, it doesn't really improve workflow as far as I'm concerned with my life, which I work in IT. So I'm mainly having to use Windows, to use things like remote desktop, and some of the software that my company uses is it's exclusive to Windows, or at least works better in Windows. So, with the Mac, I'm pretty much always inside of Parallels anyways. So, I guess a couple of other things that are worth mentioning would be, the charger for the Apple. It's huge. And I got my first MacBook Pro in 2007, and this right here has actually changed for the worse since then, in my opinion. It's still big and bulky, and the only thing they did was change it to USB-C, which whoop-de-doo. Apple is forward-thinking, I think, with trying to provide you with just one cable for everything. But the reason why I think this has gotten worse is because they used to give you little pull-out tabs right here and right here that you could wind your cable up. Now you don't have those. So you have to coil your cable up like that and put it in your bag or whatever you use to carry it with. And it's big and bulky. And then the other design flaw, I think, with this is if you put it into an electrical outlet hanging in the wall, like so, all this heavy weight of this thing is pulling down. So I've actually had this little guy start to slide off. You can see I'm doing it with one hand. This will detach completely. So it works fine, you know, if you're plugging it into a power strip that's laying flat on the floor, but if you plug that directly in an electrical outlet in a wall that's facing, vertically, you kind of have to plug it like this so that, the weight of it doesn't kind of pull it down, which can be awkward, and you may have to unplug something that's already in the wall. So anyway, I thought it was worth noting that this is still probably the worst charger I've ever seen in my life. With that being said, the Surface Pro charger is actually kind of just a standard charger that you would find for a laptop. You've got a tiny little AC brick. You have a little lead cable that plugs into the wall. It's pretty thin, limber, and flexible. And then you have the tiny skinny wire that actually goes and plugs into the computer. Which this is quite nice. It's easy to get in. It can plug in, from the top. It can, plug in this way. You can plug in this way. And here's another thing. The screen just dimmed on the MacBook Pro. So it's starting to dim after a couple minutes of inactivity. And then it goes dark really quickly. Now I've left the power settings alone on both of these devices and left them on their recommended settings for their maximum battery life. So this is super frustrating when you're doing a job like an IT. And the Surface Pro just went as well. And as you can see, it's also quicker to turn on. So I'm glad that I was able to catch that. There we go. So it took several clicks, several wiggles of the mouse to get that to go on. That's really annoying when you're working throughout the day. Like I'll be doing something here, maybe remote it into another computer, and then I'll turn over and I'll be on the customer's computer doing something. And you can spend 3-4 minutes just like that, and the screen goes off and you have to wiggle already to get it back. And that brings me to the next thing. I think the battery life on the Surface Pro is far superior than that of the MacBook Pro. So there's the specs on the MacBook Pro. And here's the specs on the Surface Pro. I think the Surface Pro's battery life is way better. I don't think I'm going to get 13 hours out of it like they recommend or they say that you can get, but I will say that it lasts a really long time. And the MacBook Pro will never get me a whole day worth of work. So from 8:30 in the morning till 5 p.m., this is never going to do it. I have had the Surface Pro get me through an entire day of work before. So definitely battery is going to win for Surface Pro. Keyboard's going to win for Surface Pro in my opinion. Trackpad is going to win on the Surface Pro in my opinion, just because of some of the weird stuff with the trackpad there. When it works it's great, but I think it still has room for improvement. It's massive, but who really cares if it isn't effective? And in my opinion it really isn't. So there you can see it's already starting to dim again just in the last couple minutes, and it's going to turn off in another few seconds here, and that'll be it going to sleep. So not only does it go to sleep faster with inactivity, the battery still doesn't last as long. So maybe that's partly because of the touch bar, I'm not sure. Which brings me to the next comparison. So the touch bar. Like if we're in Safari, for example, touch bar gives us some options, so if I create a new tab, I can click on YouTube and stuff. That's wonderful. And then the screen will start going to YouTube. And then I can kind of just touch between the two tabs. I like that I can adjust the volume by doing that. It's kind of cool. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've been using it and I like it, but it's not really, like I said, it doesn't really help me do a better job any faster than if I were over on the Surface Pro and I just go, okay, I want to adjust my volume. There we go. Just tap a button. It's just as fast, just as effective. I guess it's more of a luxury over here, a cool factor that you can show people, but it's not really something that improves workflow. Now, one of the things that I found with the fingerprint, so I put the computer to sleep. When you go to open this thing, you go ahead and grab these accessories. When you go to open this, I've had several times when I went to open it that it actually didn't come on. Let me try to get to sleep right away, and I'd have to press the button. Not only that, but there were also times when the fingerprint reader just won't work. You have to touch it, and it seems like you have to completely move your hand, give it a second to think about it, and then put your finger back on it. So, let's see if I can get it to glitch. I probably can't, but I will say Windows Hello is absolutely awesome with the Surface Pro compared to the touch bar with the Touch ID, in my opinion. I really like Windows Hello. It's one of my favorite features, not having to do anything other than press the power button, put it to sleep, and there we go. It's that quick. I'm going to do it again. That's super quick. So I'll wake up the Mac. Let me try to shut it down. Yeah, we'll click restart on the Mac, and we'll restart on the Surface Pro. Pretty similar in speed. And I'm not going to complain a whole lot about speed. I do notice when I'm working on the Surface Pro that I prefer it, to be honest with you, for my career with what I do on it. I think it's a bit faster. I do think that there are things that's a little bit more responsive and a little bit faster. I don't mind the touch bar with the Touch ID, but like I said, there are a couple times when you go to use it that when you go to engage your finger on the fingerprint reader, maybe it's that your finger's not seated perfectly or whatever, and you have to lift it off and kind of redo it again. You can't just hold it there and wait for it. It just won't respond at all until you physically take your hand off and then press it again. So that's a glitch for sure that is a little bit annoying. But it comes up from sleep pretty quick, so I can't complain there. It's just really, with the fingerprint reader at times, it's a pain in the butt. So also that's the power button. So some people, you can't really find a physical power button. Well, it's there. It could take you a little while to realize it, versus a physical button up here on the Surface Pro. It's super easy to find. One thing that I will mention, Outlook on the Mac actually seems to do better than Outlook 2016 on both computers. A little bit better than on the PC for like my work Exchange server. You can actually see down here that it takes a while to connect, and it fails to connect, and it makes me type in my password every time. But down here, this one's actually connected already. And I find that the lag time is actually more responsive inside of the Mac. For whatever reason that is, I'm not sure, but I actually like to use Outlook 2016 a little bit better on the Mac, but not really Once this one gets up, it's still not up. You can see that it's still trying to connect, and eventually it's going to pop up with a box for me to type my password, and it will connect. And then once you just have to leave Outlook open. As long as you don't close Outlook, it'll be fine. One of the things that I really also don't like on the Mac would be the printers feature. I'm going to go ahead and open up Parallels as well. The printers on a Mac, like for a usual home user, I think will be just fine. It's actually pretty user friendly. So there we go. I'm finally connected. So yeah, back to the printers. The printers on a Mac, it's kind of smart, and it'll automatically find like a network printer for you, which I guess is good and bad. For a normal home user, you have a wireless printer, it's going to be fine. But when I go into businesses and I'm installing bigger network printers that these companies lease monthly from companies, it doesn't do a good job, and the drivers are usually garbage compared to the Windows drivers, and the features are either super limited or really weird, and you have to dig really deep to try to figure out what exactly is going on. So here's Parallels on the Mac. I have that open. There are some weird things inside of Parallels that I really don't like. Yes, it does give me the option to actually work and get work done, but the way that it networks things is extremely weird and not user-friendly whatsoever. The way it sees under this PC with, my drives and everything, it's really weird. So it's just not, it's extra steps. And when you're trying to hurry to fix things, it's just not something that's normal and that you're used to. So it's kind of quirky, basically, is the best description. Does it work? Yes. Is it quirky? Yes. So I just downloaded the recent Parallels update, which has very minimal integration with the touch bar. So basically, if I want to open up Chrome, I can click there and it's going to open up Chrome. Inside of Chrome, it gives you just a couple options to do things. I really don't care about the touch bar integration, but it's minimal. It's not so great. I've found that when I'm making full screen as well, like if I come out of full screen because I need to get to something outside of Windows, and then I'm going to go back into full screen, sometimes it's a bit glitchy, like it just did it right there. It takes a second for it to refresh the whole screen, I guess is what it's doing inside of Windows. It's trying to, set the display resolution the right way. And see, it just did it. It just changed on its own. It's actually not full screen right now. So that's another glitchy thing, that when I'm connected, trying to use software to remote connect to a computer, when those kind of things go on, it's really a pain in the butt. So I thought I'd mention that. It's not the end of the world, but it is something that is worth mentioning for those out there that may be looking to do what I do on a computer. Okay, so charger for the Surface Pro wins. Basically just a regular old laptop charger. This charger is terrible. Both of them charge quickly and work fine. The USB-C, I don't really know if there's a noticeable difference between speed and charging with the USB-C. This Mac has 4 USB-C ports, so basically that's all that it has. So I had to buy 2 of these little guys, USB-C to USB-A, which we all have, so that way I can plug something in like a USB drive. So I bought 2 of them so I can plug and transfer data to and from one USB drive or one hard drive to the other. So that's an essential with the MacBook Pro. With the Surface Pro, you get one USB port over here on the side. On the back end of here, you also get a little micro SD card slot. So I have 2 of these little Lexar 32 gigs. These work great. I can put that in there and transfer data that way. And it comes with this little USB adapter so that I can put that into a computer that doesn't have access to a micro SD card. And then there's no Ethernet port on either one of these, so I went and bought this little guy. It's compatible with pretty much everything, and it's USB to USB hub to Ethernet. So this is kind of like a best of both worlds for me in IT, because just in case I need extra USB ports and or a Ethernet port, then I got that. So this is made by this J5 Create. I got it at Best Buy. I'm sure you can get them online. There's my example of the screen already going off to try to save battery. And this one's still ticking away. Other noteworthy things here on the two. Time Machine backup on the Mac, I think, surpasses anything that's built into Windows. Windows 10 does have a built-in option that I've never used to create a system image. I will try it, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to live up to Time Machine. So Time Machine is great. You can literally do an entire backup of your entire computer, and if it died or whatever and you got a brand new one, you could restore everything just as this machine was right over to the new Mac. That's a great feature to have. I really like that, and it's included with the Mac right out of the box, where Windows, again, they have a built-in backup feature, but it's definitely not going to be as good as Time Machine or a paid-for service like Symantec makes a backup and system recovery software that my company uses that is great. And that's pretty much, if I was going to make a backup of this machine, that's what I would use. So that's definitely a good thing. Size and weight, this is a 13-inch screen, this is 12.3. They're both fairly portable and about the same weight. They're definitely not very different in size and weight, so there's nothing much to compare there. Neither one has a CD drive. One thing that's worth noting on the Surface Pro, I should probably go ahead and do this, the kickstand. So it sits on a kickstand. So I like to put my my laptop on one of these little tables and sit at the couch or whatever. And one thing you gotta be more careful of, I actually dropped mine because, with the keyboard open, I had pushed it a little bit too far back to the edge, and it just went over and went backwards and down. So that's one thing that's worth noting, is that you gotta be more careful with the kickstand. It can't hold itself up because this just kind of flops open, and this kickstand has to be what holds the computer. So it's totally possible, and I actually sit with it quite often in my lap, but you got to remember that the screen doesn't hold itself open like a normal laptop would. So this is actually super easy to pick up because it's thin aluminum. It's super easy to carry, where with the Surface Pro you've always got to keep a mind of safety, because you've got to actually close this or at least pick it up like this to carry it and transport it. So it's important to be super careful with the Surface Pro. Obviously this one's a little bit easier to just pick up and walk around an office with versus the Surface Pro. You either have to close it like this to carry it, or use two hands and hold the keyboard for support in one hand and firmly grip the screen like this with the other hand. But I personally don't really care. I don't have a hard time doing that. And again, Windows Hello is just so effective, and you can take different pictures. So I have a hat on right now, and I have my hair styled a different way when I'm at work. So I have pictures of both of those so that it can recognize me no matter what kind of hairdo or hat or whatever I'm wearing. In a nutshell, if I had to pick one of these machines for overall, I would have to pick the Surface Pro, just because I work, in IT, and we work mostly with Windows systems across the board. It's rare that I have to do anything on a Mac, and if I do, then I'm on the Mac, so I don't really have to have a Mac. But there are advanced features in networking and whatnot and remote desktop that I use inside of Internet Explorer that I need it for. I actually need to use Internet Explorer in Windows to, get to certain websites on servers that are only compatible with Internet Explorer and don't really work Remote Desktop is an app that you have to download on a Mac that is finicky, and it's just extra work. It's not very good. So pretty much you have to get Parallels for certain things if you want a remote desktop. So I had to spend $100 something for an annual subscription, and on top of that install Windows 10. The Surface Pro also is actually awesome for laying in bed. Like at the end of a long day, if I want to watch some YouTube videos for a little bit. I actually highly prefer the Surface Pro because of the fact that when you're laying down, it kind of, you can create a nice angle by pushing this back and getting that kickstand to lay real flat. So it's adjustable more than the MacBook Pro. But the MacBook Pro is fine. I mean, there's people, I'm sure, that have no problem with it. But if I had to pick between the two and that, I'd definitely pick this. The speakers on this are phenomenal. The speakers on this are also phenomenal. I wouldn't say one shines above the other. They're pretty comparable. So the speakers sound great on both of them. But I would definitely pick the Surface Pro as well for my lifestyle. Now, if I didn't work in IT, the MacBook Pro is great for everything else. If I could afford to keep both of these laptops, which I can, I've got to sell one or the other, I would probably choose this one just because I prefer it for Final Cut, Logic Pro, GarageBand, all the software that you can get for the Mac is actually, I like it better than Windows. But as far as working and everything goes, the Surface Pro stands above it just because I really need Windows. Not really a knock on the Mac operating system because it's a great operating system, but I have to have Windows to work in, and Parallels just kind of doesn't cut it. So between the two, I would say, like, if you're trying to ask me which one's the better computer, I would tell you that it really depends on what you're going to use it for. Like, if you're into graphics design and whatnot, or you edit video a lot, or you like to record music a lot, I'm probably not going to tell you to go with the Surface Pro because it's not really designed for that. The MacBook Pro, on the other hand, you could easily do all of those things. And their software, I feel like, is better than Adobe, in my opinion. In Adobe, I really don't like that you have to pay monthly for their software. I'm more like, let me just buy it one time and have it, versus having to pay a monthly subscription fee. So, depending on what you're doing, like a normal student, for example, would be thrilled to have either one of these machines. So from there, it would be like personal preference on what you think would be the best thing. But for, like I said, for my personal preference with my job, I would definitely hands down pick the Surface Pro over the MacBook Pro. And again, I think it's just a little bit faster and more responsive when I do things, especially when I turn it on, and it's just really quick to open and close things, very responsive. The MacBook Pro is also great. It's pretty quick. But if I had to pick one over the other, I'd definitely pick the Surface Pro. So thanks for watching, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to leave me a comment. Like, subscribe, share, and let me know what you would like to see in the future. Thanks.